Baylor Athletics can actually give out more scholarships, but is that actually a good thing? This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Gametime. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas, and of course, the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. Super appreciate you everydayers out there. And we had some big news that is expected to really pass and be made official today about scholarships across the board in college sports and how that's going to affect Baylor. I think there's a little bit of good and a little bit of bad in there, mixed bag for both. And then a debate that has kind of raged on through the years, but finding Scott Drew's place in terms of the best coaches in college basketball. We'll discuss because the answer might surprise you. And of course, I'll do the whole thing later. USA at the Olympics, baby. Paris 2024. We're going to tell you about the Bears that are going to be there and what to look out for. And a few of them are actually coming back to campus next year. But starting first with the news that broke yesterday and is expected to pass officially today, the NCAA is expected to approve a change in scholarships, increased scholarships across multiple sports. 105, the big number. That's going to be the roster limit for football. But several outlets reporting this on Thursday. Yahoo Sports was the first one to have it. We are going to have, it looks like, scholarship increases across a huge part of the board in terms of revenue sports that we are used to seeing. As I just mentioned, football going from 85 to 105. Those are the numbers there. That's a big jump, and there could be some bad that goes with that. Basketball goes from 13 to 15. Softball from 12 to 25, a pretty big jump. Volleyball from 12 to 18. Man, a third of their roster added like that to scholarships. And baseball is going to be the biggest one. That has been a big point of contention for years. 11.7 scholarships to 34, which could fill out the entire roster. There is good and there is bad with this for the Baylor Bears. Let's start with the bad, shall we? The football one, like overall, it feels good, right? You add 20 more scholarships. That's adding top end talent. But I actually think this is going to hurt football more than it's going to help it. Now, the big thing that Clemson coach Dabo Swinney has been vocal about, and Dave Aranda has talked about this this week at the Texas High School Coaches Association annual meeting. He had talked about what that does to walk-ons. Because now you get 105 scholarships. They're not really going to be walk-ons. You're going to bring in 105 scholarship guys because, in theory, why not? And like, not to get too sappy here, but walk-ons are the foundation of this sport. It's in a sport that has become obviously very corporatized and has always had an uneven balance of power. Walk-ons are one of the great things about college sports and college football in this specific case. It really does give the chance for a kid to dream to play for his school and get a chance and go out there and put the work in, make his teammates better while also making himself better and have a chance to go for the glory. We've seen over the years some great moments with walk-ons at Baylor. Of course, we remember the big one in basketball last year with Austin Sachs, who had been giving his all for 3 years on the team, and he gets a scholarship in his senior year at Fog Allen. It was an unbelievable moment on College Game Day. We were all so happy for it. We covered it on here. Honestly, one of the biggest plays in Baylor football history. Jaron McVay, the McPlay. That he was a walk-on. He started as a walk-on. He came in at a time that was not good for Baylor athletics. This is 2017, year one, Matt Rule. They're just trying to get a roster out there. And Jaron McVay is the walk-on. And in fact, Matt Rule says, we got to walk on safety who runs like a 4.4. And flash forward 4 years, and it's the dream come true. He wins the Big 12 championship for Baylor. It's one of the great moments in the history of the program, certainly one of the great moments for a lot of us as Baylor fans. And this new scholarship increase can jeopardize a lot of that in the future. And that stinks, because there are few remaining facets of college football that still feel genuine, that still feel like the sport that we fell in love with. The pageantry, the fans, the atmospheres, the rivalries, even those are going away with conference realignment, but the walk-ons were still there. You don't walk on in the NFL. You could be an undrafted free agent, but you don't walk on. You don't come into You don't pay an NFL team to go on and earn your spot in the hopes that someday they will pay you. That is what we have still with walk-ons in this sport. And it would be a real shame to see that go away. And if we're being honest, in today's era of the transfer portal, the guys who are on scholarship who are between spot 85 or, let's be honest, spot 50 or so to 105, those guys are much, much, much more likely to hit the portal than the guys who are walk-ons and are just trying to earn a spot on the scholarship limit, the scholarship roster. And so when you take that away, we hear these coaches talking about how it's become a 12-month-a-year job and that you have to re-recruit your players and recruit half a team every year. That's only going to get worse when you add scholarships. As weird as that might sound, it's true, because those guys who are on a scholarship are much more likely to be like, I'm getting my education paid for here anyway. I'm getting the benefits typically of an NIL deal, and now I can go and find another place that has 20 extra scholarships than they had last year. Those guys are much more likely to enter the portal, and to me, I think that's a crying shame. So that's the bad part about it. We will get into the good because it's going to focus on another sport. Obviously, there is some good to football in terms of having 20 extra scholarships that you didn't have last year. That's going to bring in some more high-end talent. And at a place like Baylor, in a state like Texas, that's going to be an advantage with these states that have just an unbelievable crop of high school football talent. So Texas, obviously Florida, California, Georgia, those kinds of states and the schools within those states are absolutely going to benefit from it. But personally, I really think there is more harm than good when you talk about football in this kind of scholarship increase. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions to apply. That eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to our U.S. customers. Once again, that's ebaymotors.com. All right, not to be a negative Nelly here. We went through the negatives, I think, that would come about with this scholarship increase. Let's get to the positives. And we need not look any further than the American pastime, baseball, oft criticized for its scholarship limits, its coaching staff limit. Baseball at the college level feels like it has not hit the 21st century, even up till now, 2024, and into the 2025 season when this will finally take effect once it's passed today. Because it just felt so archaic. It felt draconian, to use a Baylor English literature word. It it felt like such a disadvantage for a school like Baylor. And I've talked about this in the past. 11.7 scholarships and between 1.5 and 2 paid assistants on your entire ball club. That's just doesn't feel like enough to go and compete for championships. And it especially doesn't feel like the case for a school like Baylor. Now, before I have people jumping down my throat, yes, TCU has a successful baseball program. Dallas Baptist has a successful baseball program. Vanderbilt, private school in the Power 5 conference, they have a very successful baseball program. Stanford in years past has had that too. So it's not the only excuse. But when you're at a school that tuition is $60,000 a year, it's not easy to go and get walk-ons in this sport, or guys on a partial scholarship, or guys on a partial academic scholarship. It's not easy to get them to come and play here versus, you might be recruiting someone from Texas, and he can go to Texas State and pay a lot less and play for a pretty darn good group of 5 baseball program. Or maybe you're battling for someone for Texas Tech, a darn good program in the Big 12 at the Power 5 level. And you don't have to worry about that scholarship price as much as you would at Baylor because it's cheaper to go there. Or Houston, or God forbid UT or A&M, all of those fit. And we see it, these SEC schools are able to dominate. They don't have a lot of private school competition in their states. It's not the only reason, but that certainly helps. For Baylor, it's a much tougher sell to say, hey, we think we have a spot for you. We'd really like you to be our bridge guy, 7th inning reliever in a high leverage situation. But all you need to do is pay $60,000 a year, and we can maybe work that out for you. That's a tough sell. That's a really tough sell. Now, going from 11.7 scholarships, the weirdest arbitrary number maybe in all of college sports, 11.7 full scholarships to 34, with the rumor that it will also, the roster will get cut down to 40 to 34. So that is your whole roster on scholarship. That could be tremendous for Baylor. Tremendous. And there are some schools that won't be able to afford all 34. We'll see how Baylor settles into that. But this could change the game for Baylor baseball, because the great equalizer through all of this and through college baseball history is the coach. Obviously, it's the players that go out there and get the results, but the big divide between the good schools, the good programs, and the bad programs is the coach. Now, I know what you're saying, Cam. That's the case in any sport. Sort of, yeah. But I could argue all day that Mark Richt is a better college football coach than Ed Orgeron, but Ed Orgeron's got a national championship. Mark Richt does not. You know what I mean? It's not as big a divide. Like Lincoln Riley, as much as we might meme him, is a better college football coach than an Ed Orgeron or a Gene Chizik. National championship coaches that had a lot more resources than someone like a Baylor would in baseball. Okay? I liked the way Steve Rodriguez was going at Baylor baseball. We obviously loved Mickey Sullivan for decades and Steve Smith, and they were always at a disadvantage that guys like Augie Garrido they were going against did not have. Augie Garrido is probably a better coach than those guys, but it was not an even playing field. And that's what we're talking about baseball-wise with this scholarship increase. It is evening the playing field. Now, this becomes what coaches have a better eye for talent. I'll give you another baseball example. Steve Rodriguez had a better eye for talent than David Pierce did at UT. And of course, the irony is Steve Rodriguez went to go work for him after he left Baylor. He has some of the highest drafted guys in Baylor baseball history. They've more Bears in the pros and the MLB right now than ever before. A lot of that is thanks to Steve Rodriguez. David Pierce, meanwhile, underwhelmed his whole time at UT, even with a couple trips to Omaha. They were never comfortable having him there. And he got canned after another underwhelming season this year, where the University of Texas at Omaha did not make the College World Series. So that's what I mean by saying Baylor has been at a disadvantage. I wonder what some of these coaches could have done with a full allotment of scholarships that Baylor's going to walk into right now. So what is this great for? This is great for Baylor baseball. Therefore, great for all of us. I can't wait. Speaking of coaches, there has been some buzz on the internet about who the best coaches in college basketball are. Of course, we know our favorite coach, potentially future president of the United States, if you are an everyday listener to this program and listen this week. I'm not going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. There weren't many of you who listened to that last episode, but we have some great everydayers here. We're going to go over who is the best coach of college basketball and where does our beloved Scott Drew fall into all of this. Welcome back, Locked On Baylor. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. One of the big, buzz tweets of the week, if you will, the Field of 68, the top 10 current head coaches in college basketball. Number 1, Dan Hurley. No surprise there. Back-to-back national championships while still early in his big-time coaching career. Very good. Number 2, Bill Self. Sure, yeah. Pretty great. Great winning percentage. Couple national championship rings. Number 3 is Mark Few, followed closely at number 4 by Scott Drew. This divided people. This divided the great people of the 2021 national championship game. Good friends, Mark Few and Scott Drew, both have had terrific programs. Obviously, Mark Few has had it for a little bit longer than Scott. A little bit of a different circumstance, I would say. But this got Baylor people ablaze of whether Mark Few is a better coach than Scott Drew. And to be honest, it's a bit of a toss-up. Okay, I love Scott Drew. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. As well he should be. And I think he's got more Final Fours and hopefully some more national championships in his future. The way this Baylor program is going, I firmly believe that. What Mark Few has done at Gonzaga is also one of the great stories in the history of college basketball. When he got there, they were nothing. They were nothing. They were a podunk little school in a nothing city in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, it did not have the allure of some of the small parochial schools of the East Coast when it comes to basketball. They didn't have that. And he turned them into a power at the national level. Been there 25 years, couple Final Fours, couple national championship game appearances, and one of the best records, I think, in college basketball right now. It's been either 6 or 7 straight years that they have made the Sweet 16. I love that for Baylor right now. But the thing I love even more is the fact that Baylor has a national championship banner hanging at the Foster Pavilion. One that was against the Gonzaga Bulldogs. One that Scott Drew got the upper hand against Mark Few. And you look at Scott Drew's resume. Sure, only one Final Four, only one national championship, I say ironically. But also one of the great rebuilds in the history of college sports, as we know. It's a different kind of tracker. You know, Mark Few got the winning pretty quickly. Scott Drew didn't even have that luxury with how big a rebuild it was. So, You look at these two guys, they're both Hall of Famers, both so well respected. But who is the better coach? That depends on your mindset. Okay? You can either say, I want the consistent, deep tournament runs for a guy whose career is not over yet, by the way, who could still yet win national championships in Mark Few. Or I've got a guy who's made a couple deep runs, and he's also got that ring. He's got that national championship banner. They can't take that away from him. Depends on what side of the aisle you're on. And what I find very interesting about this is not the 3 and 4 slots, but that the 5 slot is Kelvin Sampson. A lot of respect for Kelvin, right? And he's done a great thing with this Houston program. He did some great work at Oklahoma. In fact, I would go as far as saying his resume is fairly close to Mark Few's. And if you're doing the 2 lines of thinking that I just laid out, Kelvin Sampson would be on the side of Mark Few. He's not won a national championship. So either those guys are better than Scott Drew, who does have a championship, or they're not. So what I'm trying to say is you either put both of them ahead of Scott Drew, or you put both of them behind Scott Drew. That's at least my line of thinking. What would I rather have as a fan? I'd rather have the national championship. I'd rather have that night in April. I'd rather have that banner raising ceremony. I'd rather have that one shining moment music video with my school at the end. I would rather have the parade. I would rather have my national championship t-shirt, hat, hoodie, sweatshirt, quarter zip. I'd rather have all of that than to say I've been to more Final Fours, personally. But trust me, I do get the other argument. And the biggest part of all of that is Gonzaga ain't going anywhere. In fact, they didn't even have a great year by Gonzaga standards this past year, but they made a run late in the regular season, and they kicked the crap out of Kansas, the number 2 coach, by the way. So I get that. I get that line of thought. But me, personally, I'm taking the national championship. Maybe that is just me. And one other thing I found interesting about this is there was literally like a 12-month span between April 21 and April 22 that you could have made a real argument for Scott Drew to be ahead of Bill Self. And that was the last year of Mike Krzyzewski. So if Bill Self doesn't win that national championship in 22, you could be making an argument for Scott Drew as the best active coach in college basketball. Because he did more with less, whereas Bill Self did less with more. But once Bill Self wins the second one, it's tough to argue. His winning percentage is off the charts. Obviously, there are things that are inherently, how do I word this? There are advantages that Bill Self has had and will probably always have that Scott Drew does not. Scott Drew comes in one of the biggest scandals in the history of the sport. Bill Self comes in, inherits a team that went to the national championship game the year before, and wears Kansas across their chest. The easiest recruiting pitch, maybe in college basketball. Yeah, you know me? We're Kansas. We have the most wins of like anybody ever. Yes, the Jayhawks, Allen Fieldhouse, the national championships, all of that. Scott Drew didn't have that, and he still took it to the mountaintop. And it's been a tete-a-tete with Bill Self the last 5-6 years in this conference. It's been the best conference in America, and those have been the 2 best teams. But that's all for naught. Bill Self deserves his spot on the list. Just in case you're curious about the rest of them. I just lost it. Cam. Okay, Kelvin Sampson 5, Nate Oates 6, Matt Painter 7, Bruce Pearl 8, Rick Pitino 9, and Tom Izzo 10. More arguments I'd have for that. We don't really have the time, but if we're going off full body of work, Pitino should be much higher, and John Calipari should be on this list. And if we're going off recency, okay, then Tom Izzo probably shouldn't be on this list. Neither should Rick Pitino. Both of them have lost their fastball. Anyway, we're moving on from that because we have the Olympics starting today, opening ceremonies. Dun, 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 B-U-S-A, because 8 Bears are going to, in Paris for the 2024 Olympics. So wanted to shout out all of them first. Nathaniel Ezekiel, men's track and field. Nathaniel Ezekiel representing Nigeria. Chinekrim, which I think I got right. Prosper Namdi for Nigeria in track and field as well. Nuni Omat, South Sudan. They're going to be playing the U.S. in men's basketball. John Pierce, men's tennis, Australia. Avery Skinner for volleyball for the United States of America. Christy Wallace for women's basketball, Australia. Brittany Griner for women's basketball of the good old U.S. of A. And Michael Ford, the head men's track coach, going to coach the sprinters and the hurdlers for the United States in Paris. Big shout out to all of them. So excited to always see our Bears. I mean, the Bears, look, Baylor has a pretty good legacy at the Olympics, especially in track and field. Michael Johnson, never heard of him? Not bad. Pretty good. Maybe the best American sprinter ever. First ever to win the 200 and the 400 meter gold medal, 96 Atlanta. Get to know him. Jeremy Warner as well, not to be forgotten. Clyde Hart, of course, the legendary coach, has coached, I believe, 13 medalists at the Olympics. That's incredible. Shout out to Nuni Omat. Great dunk over Anthony Davis in that friendly last week. Again, he'll be playing the USA. Great to see his career continuing to take off. I mean, so happy for one of those foundation guys in the Scott Drew era. And of course, I'm picking Brittany Griner to win gold again for the women's basketball team at the Olympics. Let me know what you think about those Bears in Paris. Drop that down in the comments below. Please let me know what you think about this coach list. Which school of thought are you going with? And why is it Baylor? Let me know if you think Scott Drew is a better coach than Mark Few. Drop that down in the comments below. And of course, this scholarships thing. How are you going to feel about the walk-ons going? And how important is this going to be for baseball? All of that and more in the comments below. Or just say, hey, that helps for the algorithm, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate you everydayers. I appreciate you new listeners. I appreciate you all for making your first listen today and every day. We'll be back next week with your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.